Hi, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Taco Plebs with Bitcoin Magazine. My name is Casey Carrillo, and I'm excited to be here today with Mitch Klee, who has contributed a couple times here at the magazine, and both pieces were fantastic. Mitch, do you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Mitch Klee. Just contribute to Bitcoin Magazine, hang out on Twitter, talk to people about Bitcoin, listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I feel like that's the very typical Bitcoiner circuit right there is hang out on Twitter, contribute to the magazine, and watch those podcasts. But there's so much to learn, right? It's like constant.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I found there's a lot of places to learn. I think if you find you can find a pretty good funnel on just podcasts in general.
Hmm.
So, and listening to consistently to new podcasts, you get inundated with a bunch of information. And reading is good too. There's a lot of books out there. I feel like we've gone uh, exponential as far as the information out there for Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's like we've seen that at Bitcoin Magazine. When I first started, the amount of inflowing content was so much less than what we've got now, and the quality was different too. So um, the network effect expands beyond just the price. It's about the education too, right? So very interesting. But let's jump into our questions here and our interview. I want to ask you, Mitch, what is your Bitcoin rabbit hole story? What got you started on this journey?
Sure. So 2013, 14, that was my first introduction to Bitcoin, and I was in college. So I think I heard Andreas Antonopoulos talk on Joe Rogan. So I listened to that, and I'm like, okay, how can I kind of like get my hands dirty with this? Thought about doing some mining. Realized I had like a crappy i3 processor that I built from high school, and I couldn't mine anything on that. And then my next step was maybe I could just buy some. By that time, the price had skyrocketed and dropped. And I was pretty glad I didn't buy any because it dropped I went from like 1200 down to 3 or 400 or something like that. And I was like, I'm glad I didn't buy any. And years go by, and I got back into it in 2017 with the big bubble with altcoins and Ethereum and everything. Got introduced in that. I was looking for something to invest in. I was looking for like brand new technology, and I found Bitcoin. I was listening to some Tim Ferriss podcast or something like that, and I found Bitcoin, and then I found Ethereum, and then I found all these other altcoins, and I kind of got sucked down that like technology aspect of it.
Hmm.
And I was trading a little bit, and I lost a lot of money. I feel like I made some, but I feel like I would have had a lot more. Um, a lot more. Actually, I definitely would have had a lot more Bitcoin had I not traded and had I not like, went into the altcoin casino. So a lot of learning experiences there, but um, after 2017 and 2018, I kind of just went strictly Bitcoin, and instead of spreading myself wide and going across the entire spectrum, I went deep, and I dove deep into Bitcoin and really tried to figure out what surrounded it. And I kind of came to the conclusion that there's you can't there really is only one. And yeah, so um, I mean, that's kind of just how I got started, got into it, and my journey through Bitcoin. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's a super common theme. I feel like. The last Taco Plebs I did with Nelson Chen, he talked about the exact same thing where uh, those of us interested in technology and such, it's very easy to kind of get beguiled by Ethereum and the other cryptocurrencies that are out there when you're first starting and you haven't had that exposure to like the deep level stuff. But just like as we were talking about with all this education coming out, I feel like it's so much easier and easier to be exposed to this level of thinking earlier on now. I feel like before it was almost like a hidden knowledge, the depth of Bitcoin and what really was behind it, right?
Yeah. And well, the scamminess was at another level in 2017. So it was like 2014, they had just clones. Everybody knew they were clones. And then 2017, they were clones, except they had clones with a UX and a marketing team and
Hmm.
all these people backing it. And you're like, okay, so this is really legit. I'm going to look into this. And you want to expand and you want to think about the technology, but what really people miss is the portion of their of like the network effect of Bitcoin. So really you can make something a little bit better. You can make it incrementally better. You can do a, a different this, that, whatever. Something maybe changes slightly against Bitcoin, but in reality, you have to be 100 times better than Bitcoin, and you have to have the network to propel it behind it. And that doesn't exist anywhere in any other altcoin or Ethereum.
No, definitely not. And I think that's definitely something unique to Bitcoin right now. And just the incentive structure of Bitcoin is very different, and the way it rewards knowledge seeking and new education. Kind of going off of that, though, I want to ask, how has Bitcoin changed your life? Because it does do dramatic things sometimes to the way people perceive time and store value and money.
Yeah, it's I think independence is a lot of it. So, and personal responsibility. Um, when you start going into Bitcoin, you have to kind of take more responsibility for yourself, and you gain more of an independence being having more independent money. But then at the same time too, you have an independent thought process of critical thinking, and you can't rely on other people to critically think for you in this brand new field, so you kind of have to think through it. And um, so I really started just growing in like my financial global financial system, like the background and all that, and learning all these different aspects and what's happening in the periphery of Bitcoin. Because to learn Bitcoin, you have to learn finance, you have to learn technology, you have to learn the decentralized aspect of this brand new technology. Um, you have to learn network effects, and there's a lot of things that surround the periphery of Bitcoin that which makes it such a blind spot for people because it's not immediately accessible for some people. Some people get it right away, and then some people don't. And I would say most people don't get it right away, but most people have a door that's available to them, where Bitcoin can, or sorry, some people have a door that's available to them, and you kind of have to find your way on your own.
Definitely. Yeah, I think like self-induced investigation is a huge part of Bitcoin. Um, and there's certainly something to be said for the way that our current or our previous, if you would say, monetary system is sort of thought of as too complicated, and people often rely on external sources to kind of simplify information and understand finance. And Bitcoin kind of turns it on its head and says, if you do your own research, you're rewarded. And it really incentivizes that sort of like self reliance and digging deeper than just what might be superficially accessible, as you said. Definitely.
Exactly.
So, uh, I want to ask you what inspired you to write your two articles for the magazine. They were both great. One is titled Bitcoin as a Pressure Release Valve, and the other is Bitcoin and the Changing Definition of CPI. I want to just ask what inspired you to write those. They were great pieces each. So,
Yeah, thanks, Casey. I think it was answering my own questions. So with Bitcoin as a pressure release valve, it kind of goes into the topic of how can Bitcoin be adopted and how people can escape the monetary system that we have right now. And it kind of touches on the leapfrog effect with other countries, which is similar to like cell phones. So previously, other countries like Africa didn't have any communication. They didn't have money to set up telephone lines and build this infrastructure and build telephone companies and communication companies and the backbone to everything. But then cell phones came out, they're 100 times better, they're 100 times cheaper, and they leapfrogged that whole infrastructure and went straight to cell phones. So this is the leapfrog effect, and I think that has a similar implication to Bitcoin, where you have a huge portion of the world who's unbanked. They don't have secure money. They don't have a good money, and but everybody has cell phones and everybody has the internet, or most people do. And so it's it kind of creates this scenario where you can leapfrog everything, and that kind of inspired me to write that pressure release valve article. Was the leapfrog effect and kind of like figuring out how that might play out. And same with the CPI is I was trying to figure out like what was happening.
Mhm.
You had like lumber going through the roof, monetary expansion 25% on the year previous. We printed like a huge amount since 2008. So I was just like trying to figure out what was happening. And I looked into it. I mean, you like CPI has got to be measured by a certain way. And then it turns out we changed our definition of CPI from our 1980 definition of CPI. And 1980 says we're at like 12% or something like that inflation. And then also, if you want to take into effect, even 1980 doesn't talk about asset inflation, where the Fed's expanding their balance sheet or their assets to like 35% or something like that, something crazy, to where the Fed is just strictly pumping money into the system. They're pumping their and it's just like trickling down to all the other banks, and then it's going into these assets, and it's holding up our monetary. So I was like trying to figure out how that would affect everything, and it kind of just turned out that was my inspiration. I needed to figure it out on my own, I think.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the way we figure things out. And in Bitcoin, it turns out that sometimes we have to write things to figure things out because they haven't really been written about yet. And we're really dealing with some novel ideas here. But I totally agree with your perspective on CPI, how it changes. And I think it's a very common theme amongst Bitcoiners to understand that our our current measures of inflation are completely obfuscating the actual reality of what's going on, and it's often cited by people who are critics of Bitcoin that the inflation narrative is overblown, and the reason it appears overblown is because it's not reflective of reality. So super interesting pieces. I highly recommend anyone who has not read those to go read them. They're on Bitcoin Magazine. Just look up Mitch Klee. Um, Anyways, to move on, I want to ask you what you're most looking forward to in the space as we move forward.
I think I'm looking forward to like the foundation of money, like a foundational truth of money, because you can't mess with Bitcoin. You can't change it. It's 21 million. So right now, I think we were just talking with CK. He was saying how the monetary system, it's not just like inflation, it's just a hurricane of of the people in control trying to figure out how they can offset this or offset that or change this or change that, and they're messing with the system and creating this hurricane. And and Guy said it's an arc. Bitcoin is an arc for people. So it's a foundational truth in how people store their value. And and it's kind of like an art and an escape for people from the traditional monetary system. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most is this thing growing, Bitcoin growing as like it's just like a living organism. It seems like it's a living organism and it's just growing into something, and there's so many facets of it. It's grabbing this, it's grabbing that, it's expanding into these different areas, and it's all like a foundation of truth because there's no changing it. And everybody knows what it is, and everybody's confirming it on their node, and it's not changing.
Definitely. Absolutely. I think we all look forward to this time of grand adoption, but I also think this specific time of transitionary period where it's so unique, and we get to really experience something special as we kind of move into hyper Bitcoinization, I guess you would say. So it wouldn't be Meet the Taco Plebs if I didn't ask you this final question, which is your price prediction for the end of this year as well as the end of 2030.
It's such a hard question. I don't know. I don't have like a specific price prediction, but because I don't think anybody can really predict the price, but you can start estimating it. So I mean, as far as like end of 2021, it's hard to say. It's hard to say if we go flat for a while. But it's if we do go flat, it's a good buying opportunity. But I think you can start to estimate where Bitcoin derives its true value, and if money draws like the most, there's an idea where everybody gets drawn to the most liquid money. That's how money's created. That's why we have a single reserve currency like the US dollar. But it's been separated throughout these different countries. But if every single country has one availability to the one currency, they're all drawn to the most liquid currency. The most liquid currency, an asset, is Bitcoin. And so you have to start to think, is Bitcoin going to be, are other assets that are, quote, stores of value going to find their true value against Bitcoin? Because not everybody's going to take art. You can't sell your house in Miami to some person in Venezuela as like a store of value. It doesn't work like that. So I don't know. Like you start estimating from there, and multiply it by the trillions of dollars that are out there in assets and stores of value, and ask yourself like what's the true value of these assets if they're not being held as a store of value. So I think there's a lot of room to grow. I think we've got 2% of the world adopting Bitcoin right now, and it's growing faster than the internet. And uh, and I mean, price is a function of demand in an uh, an elastic asset. So we've got a long way to go.
That is probably the best answer you could have given to such a ridiculous question. But I really appreciate you coming on Meet the Taco Plebs, Mitch. We love your contributions to the magazine. Again, if any of you have not read those, I highly recommend it. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Mitch. It was great talking to you.
It was great talking with you, Casey. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. See you later, everyone. Catch the next Bitcoin Taco Plebs, and see you later.